Hi everyone, I'm Taylor Hudak with acTVism Munich, here to bring you the latest update on the Julian Assange case. Saturday, April 11th, 2020 marked 1 year since WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange was arrested inside London's Ecuadorian embassy, where he had been arbitrarily detained for the past 7 years. The Australian journalist and publisher entered the embassy in 2012 when he applied for and was subsequently granted political asylum by the administration of then Ecuadorian President Rafael Correa. The WikiLeaks founder was eventually granted Ecuadorian citizenship in December of 2017. But a change in government in Ecuador to the leadership under President Lenin Moreno drastically altered his conditions there, making his final year in the embassy a difficult one. His health was deteriorating, and he was repeatedly denied access to the appropriate medical care and facilities by the UK government. In February 2018, a UK judge ruled that Assange's arrest warrant was still in effect, confirming that he would be arrested if he were to leave the embassy. The new Ecuadorian government forged a closer relationship with the United States. A mere 24 hours after a high-level meeting between American and Ecuadorian officials took place, Ecuador implemented a harsh new regime of restrictions on Assange, preventing him from having visitors or communicating with the outside world, effectively rendering him in solitary confinement. By June 2018, 10 Democrat senators sent a letter to Vice President Mike Pence urging him to raise the issue of Ecuador's continued protection of Assange prior to a meeting with President Moreno. The net was tightening not only on Assange, but also on others connected to WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks source Chelsea Manning was imprisoned due to her refusal to testify before a grand jury investigating WikiLeaks. Speculation soon began that Julian Assange would be expelled from the embassy. The UN Special Rapporteur on Torture, Nils Melzer, called on Ecuador not to revoke Assange's asylum. And just days prior to April 11th, WikiLeaks revealed a spying operation on Assange, his colleagues, and associates, and warned that his arrest was imminent. On Thursday, April 11th, 2019, shocking footage of Assange being carried out of the embassy went viral. As he was carried away, the Australian journalist urged the UK to resist the Trump administration. Take a look. The British police were able to gain access to Assange in Ecuador's London embassy after Ecuador revoked Assange's citizenship and his asylum. Ecuadorian officials then invited the British Metropolitan Police into the embassy, where they arrested the WikiLeaks founder. Assange briefly appeared in court and was given a lengthy 50 weeks in prison for breaching bail, a minor offense. He served his 50-week sentence in HMP Belmarsh and is currently being held there on remand. Belmarsh Prison is known as the UK's Guantanamo Bay. The day of his arrest, the U.S. government revealed that Assange was charged with 1 count of conspiracy to commit computer intrusion. Several weeks later, in May of 2019, it was made public that the WikiLeaks founder was charged with an additional 17 counts under the U.S. Espionage Act of 1917. If tried and convicted, he could face up to 175 years in prison. The confirmation of the U.S. extradition request validated assertions Assange had long made that he was being targeted for prosecution by the U.S. government. As the charges leveled against him were directly related to his journalism and publishing activities, figures in the corporate media began to show support for Assange. Many of them also condemned the DOJ's decision to charge a publisher under the Espionage Act, given the grave threat it poses to press freedoms. Meanwhile, various activist groups began emerging in various parts of the world, calling upon media figures and those who were in positions of power to show their support for a free press by publicly supporting the WikiLeaks founder. To bring more awareness to Assange's case and this attack on the free press, 2 international panel discussions were held on Saturday. The Free the Truth event, organized by Deepa Driver and Ian Munro, hosted a panel of highly esteemed guests, including WikiLeaks editor-in-chief Kristinn Hrafnsson, investigative journalist Stefania Maurizi, author and human rights activist Craig Murray, among many others who joined in to have a discussion about the case. Stefania Maurizi weighed in on the double standard regarding the publication of WikiLeaks documents, as well as the unfair treatment of Assange.
They made Julian Assange's life horrible. I mean, he's taking the heat for all this publication, and we journalists who published the very same documents, haven't have any problem, so I cannot accept this, as a journalist. I have a professional conscience and I have an ethical conscience. This is why I feel the duty to speak out, and I wonder how many dozens of journalists who work on these documents have got huge scoops, thanks to Julian, thanks to WikiLeaks, are silent. I really cannot accept this. I really feel a sense of decency of speaking out, because I cannot accept this double standard.
Further expanding on this point, Craig Murray says that mainstream media figures are not only not standing up for a fellow journalist, but they are openly attacking him.
The mainstream media doesn't stand up to a fellow journalist, doesn't stand up for somebody whose only crime is to release state secrets, and state secrets of showing state atrocities. It's not just they don't stand up for him, they openly attack him, and they do so with glee and hatred. And that is something which I find very difficult to deal with. And again, it goes down to the disappearance of the civilities of society that we all took as a feature of the kind of society we believed we were living in. The attacks on Julian by the mainstream media are just awful. The attitude to Julian of the mainstream media is awful. You go onto Twitter on any discussion of Julian Assange, and you will see countless mainstream media blue-ticked journalists on Twitter coming in to make jokes and callous remarks and nasty things about, oh, he's a rapist, all this absolute nonsense, things which actually they do know to be untrue.
The event concluded with a Q&A with one viewer asking how Assange was doing. Kristinn Hrafnsson said that he is not well and is not in a good place, but he is resilient. Soon after the event wrapped up, a second online stream took place, which was organized by the Courage Foundation. Whistleblower Daniel Ellsberg, former president of the National Lawyers Guild Marjorie Cohn, and journalist Chris Hedges were invited on for a conversation. Journalist Aaron Mattei moderated the discussion. Each panelist opened with a statement on the dangers associated with charging a journalist with espionage. Daniel Ellsberg expanded on the historic nature of this case.
Julian Assange is extradited and prosecuted in the US. It will be the first prosecution of a journalist for telling the truth to the American people, ever. A very clear violation of the First Amendment, freedom of the press and freedom of speech. It will in fact be something like the death of the First Amendment or the freedom of press in this country.
The media's role in the vilification of Assange was addressed. Chris Hedges reflected back on the establishment media's position in our society.
But then they did what their role is as a liberal organization, and that is to defame, insult, and carry out prolonged character assassination against figures that rose up against the establishment. That's how liberal institutions, this is what Chomsky has pointed out many times, that is the role of liberal institutions. They are used to ameliorate, to a certain extent, the system itself, to perhaps critique the excesses of the system, but not to question the virtues and the goodness of the system. And so when you have figures like Dan, like Chelsea, like Julian, like Snowden, that rip back the veil and expose the mendaciousness and criminal activity on the part of the power elite. The role of the liberal establishment, is why it's allowed to exist in a capitalist democracy, is to posit themselves as kind of the moral arbiter and to destroy and turn into pariahs those figures that have spoken a truth about power that those in power don't want heard.
The second stream concluded with a vital message, reiterating the importance of supporting at-risk journalists and persecuted individuals despite his or her political beliefs. Those who were interested in learning more information about the case and contributing were encouraged to visit defend.wikileaks.org. You may also visit the Courage Foundation's website at couragefound.org. This case is ongoing, and I will continue to provide you all with the latest updates, so do make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Taylor Hudak with acTVism Munich, and I will see you all next time.